and different. And sometimes it looks like you've taken the Mexican flag and tie-dye and just melded it all together. Because we want to stand out, we want to be seen for being unique. So we're going to start with a little brief video about Enneagram types on job interviews. Oh. Sure, the volume is up. Yep.
Everything, you don't know anything.
Is that water I got you okay? Oh, good.
They're just
good.
running through
I
them
own my own
fast.
business also, which I'm not planning on giving up.
I am not the girl for this job. That's not me, but I don't know if that really helps with what you're describing.
The smoke alarms are up to date, and you can show me a map of all the fire escapes.
Boom! Best bump right there. I like you. I can already tell I like you. We got a date.
And I do like that label on my desk that says boss.
I don't want to get your job. I'm kidding. I hate conflict.
Okay,
Yes,
number
my
one.
references, I've provided, as you can see, their email addresses, their phone numbers, their home addresses, their social security numbers, the names of their firstborn children, and the schools that they attend. Just in case you have a hard time reaching them, you can always call and say it's this school trying to get a hold of you. Everything's put in to their boxes. It's all neat in a book.
Tell me
Number
about
two.
you, though. Yeah, are you seeing some good applicants? I just want to make sure you really find the person who's right for the job. You know, I mean, the last thing I want is for you to put in this long 9-hour workday, formerly with no one. So that'd be a bummer. Did you get a chance to try that casserole yet?
Just a second, this is
Number three.
This is my other job. Yeah. So my jewelry business is going places, but we're not there yet. So how I see this working together is I can still pursue this on the side with a flexible schedule. I'm not planning on coming in every day, like 5 days a week in a row. And the salary part is really good, so perfect match.
I'm going to be so honest with you. I read and reread this job description before I walked in those beautiful rotating glass doors today. I think there may be an opportunity for us to create a new position. For example, a smell coordinator. This room, the scent, mixology in here is off. So smell branding would be definitely a gift of mine. So do I have experience in customer service interactions? I guess that depends. Just over 15 years of experience as the head of concierge for Marriott Enterprises, but I doubt that applies. Spanish, yeah, I mean, I lived in Spain for 4 years, so I guess you could say I'm conversational, but I'm sure you're going to want somebody more fluent than
Can you
that.
tell me a little bit about your 401k plans? Self-directed, simple, safe harbor, tiered, platinum, hopefully not, traditional. You might want to be aware that the coffee maker was plugged into the same outlet as the water cooler, which, as you know, is an OSHA hazard.
Previous experience? I got previous experience coming out of my ears. Semester and a half of film school, professional dog walker, street entertainer. For a summer, I worked in the Adirondacks, rad barista, a life coach, and a union certified forklift operator.
That's what I bring to the table. The person I'd be working for, are they going to be here for a while? How long until I can take over their position? Yeah. I understand that that's not the job I'm here interviewing for today. I'm a natural leader. Boss.
So it's my greatest, oh my gosh, you guys have the neatest little desert critters out there. Look at that. What was the question? What's my greatest ambition in life? Right, so what you mean is, okay, so my greatest ambition. So, I know this one.
Now, I have to say, the 9 one there, that doesn't really resonate so much for me, but the rest of them, I thought were just spot on. Let me see. Let me get my PowerPoints up here. So, anybody have anything left over from last week to do with the 3? Any insights? Anything you want to share about being a 3 or questions? Oh, that's the wrong one. Back again. No?
Here we go.
Okay, Christy, hang on a sec.
I appreciate everyone who spoke, including yourself, because,
Hang on a sec.
well, I'm a 3, and sometimes I kind of forget about all the different facets, and I was glad to be reminded of all the different parts of being a 3, 'cause it's intense.
Anyone else? No? Okay. Let's see. So I want to start off again this morning with a little bit of an overview. And I don't have my mic on yet. I'll get there. So, you know, we have several new people again this morning, so we keep gaining new people. And I want to show this slide again to remind us that we're approaching this not just from the idea that it's a personality indicator like the Myers-Briggs. We're using this as a spiritual tool to go deeper. And maybe the metaphor or the analogy that might work is that what we're looking at is the ocean, and we're looking at the waves on the ocean, the individual waves, and how each one of them appears and how they look and how they interact with the ones alongside them, and sometimes over there, sometimes over there. But once we get past all of that, we're going to take the deep dive into that which is common to all 9, the essence. And all of the good qualities of each one of these 9 personalities makes up, if you will, the essence of the divine. And all of that is available to us once we learn to consciously become aware of our conditioning, and then we can stop reacting the way we normally do, and then we make choices, conscious choices, to go in other directions. We move to the wing that can supplement what we're lacking. And we can go into that personality and mine that for all of the good aspects of it. And then we can go to the other wing, likewise, do the same thing. And then we can go to cross the line to the one that is really our healthy spot. We can incorporate all of those qualities also. So let me see what I put in here. Okay. So I have a slide here that might be, I don't know, we'll see. It looks okay, I think. You can see that. Let me get my microphone on. We were having a little challenge earlier with electronics. The heater kept turning off. We turned on my microphone and everything went crazy, sort of screaming.
I just had a question about what you just said. You said you could use either wing to bring in some quality that you felt would complete you, and you also said you could go to your healthy point, but you also can go to your point of stress. There's gold in that stress point too.
There is, provided you don't go in the way that you usually go, like the 1 goes to the 4 and falls apart. So you don't want to do that. But so the 1 would go to the 4 and look at that valuing of the self, of your uniqueness, rather than going into the whole perfection thing where you're not feeling good enough, and so you go to the 4 and you can mine that for the specialness, the uniqueness, the qualities that you do have, and be appreciative of that and really feel that and value it. So yes, you can also go to what you would call the breakdown point, so to speak. Yeah, you can go to all of these for all of the good qualities. That's the point that I'm trying to make, that it's all the divine. And each one of these points is pointing us to a divine attribute, if you will: wisdom, power, order, love. And we want all of those. Wendy.
The way that I found it very helpful to understand the 4 points that each type is connected to, right? So we've got our wings, up and below, and then we've got our diagonal lines that we connect to. And what resonates for me is the sense that I can resource the high sides and the low sides of my diagonal points, and I can also resource the high sides and the low sides of my wings. So as a 3, if I'm feeling like I'm way too out there and I'm super task-oriented, I can resource the side of the 4 that gives me access to introspection, where I can think about my feelings, because the 4 informs me of that. Similarly, going to the 2 side helps me appreciate the value that people bring to the equation. Going to the diagonal side, going to the 6, for example, the low side of 6 is actually, for me, showing up as paranoia and self-doubt. The high side of 6 is around really interrogating my decision-making in terms of, have I thought through everything rather than just following my tendency, which is to act on impulse. Similarly, going to the 9 as the low side of 9, and this is what we describe in the classical Enneagram as the stress point, right? But the low side, I like to think of that as the low side, which for me is just kind of being in a place of lethargy and not really wanting to think about what's important to me. It's kind of pushing the pause button and letting my nervous system reset. Whereas the high side of 9 is really feeling like I'm part of everything and everything is a part of me. So if we look at each type by, so Jerry, there's an analog there for you, I'm sure, with the 2 and the 9. For you is the 1, the high side and the low side, as well as the 4 and the 7. So going to the 4 brings you to a place of depression, as it does with me going to the 9. But going to the high side of 4 gives you a reference point for how to think outside the box. Is that an explanation that kind of makes some sense?
I'm very discombobulated this morning. Everything is a little off.
Yeah, it's in its shadow.
What?
The Mercury retrograde's in its shadow.
It's in its shadow. Mercury. Okay, I'll buy that. Fortunately, the heater is working. That's all that I care about. Otherwise, so giving a sort of an overview, and this probably will come as no surprise, but if you look at traditional theology, whether it's Eastern or Western, but let's stick with traditional Christianity, or at least a phase of traditional Christianity, because it didn't always believe or think in these terms, but it's what became the predominant understanding of Christianity. So what do we know from the Bible, from how Genesis is interpreted? So there was this beautiful paradise. There was this place of perfection and innocence. Okay? So here we have the essential nature that the Enneagram is talking about, the Eden, where when we are all in our place and everything is wonderful and all is well, then we can be at peace, we can be serene, we can be wise, we can be loving. All of those wonderful qualities are here. And then, of course, you have the fall, the famous fall, okay? So then something happens that takes us away from our essential nature, feeling good about ourselves. Do I not have a setting on?
Yeah.
I thought I did them all. And so we talked about how the Enneagram talks about usually a childhood wound, that there's some way in which our parents, one or both, we perceive that they don't give us what we need. And then we respond to that. And how we respond to that then becomes, I'll go down a little bit here. well, let's just go back here. It'd be easier to follow this. So we become aware that something's off, and of course, we have this instinctual desire to get back to paradise. Don't we? We all know that there's something off with me. For the one, I'm trying to fix it, all of that. There's that desire for wholeness, for my essential nature. And then there's a basic fear and virtue compulsion that kicks in. Again, it's different for each of the 9. The basic fear for the one is that I'm not perfect, and therefore because I'm not perfect, I'm not going to be loved. I'm not going to get what I want. I'm going to be criticized. And so the one is living always in this overstimulated nervous system. I love that from Matt Kahn. And that applies, for any of the 9. In a sense, all of us have this overstimulated nervous system about something. There's something, pricking us that we're on guard, we're on edge. And so then we start to have a compulsion or a fixation about how do I cover this up? How do I respond to this? And it becomes the tactic that we use. And for the one, you have a fixation about criticizing themselves, because you have to get better. You have to get perfect. So it's just this never-ending internal super ego. Like when I was a kid and a teenager, I literally thought it was the voice of God. I did not understand that it was just my head talking. No, you can't go against that. You must do what that says. So in each of your types, and I hate to be talking about the one all the time, but it's kind of like my reference points, and you can probably think about, well, what is that continual voice in your head that's always saying the same thing to you? And then, of course, there's the great suffering and heartbreak. There's the frustration. Ones live in frustration. And that shows up then as irritation. She says, oh, God. So, yeah. So,
It's not perfect.
It's okay, Jerry, it's not perfect.
Oh, there we go. I wanted that.
It's solely perfection for one.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
May I ask, are you saying then this is innate behavior rather than learned survival mode?
I would say that,
You were born a 1.
I don't
or
think
your
so.
behavior. So it's learned behavior,
I think it's learned behavior, yeah.
survival.
Yeah, because, I mean, I can remember being in my happy place as a little boy, and then I remember the day that when I showed my test result to my father, and I had hundreds and everything except religion, which I think is And so here I am, trying to get 100 in religion. And immediately, like the first time ever, I felt this flame of white heat just rush up from my dantian of, anger and rage at my father. Like this was so unfair. And then it was, from then on, it was this like trying, fixated to get the 100, always, with everything. You had a question?
As I remember last week, a couple people spoke about how
They actually did change from one number to another as they got older. So the assumption is life's experience is made. And so it isn't totally inborn.
Well, I mean, it is. I think it's conditioning. And you can, as I said, this is about waking up. This is about coming to the realization. And as I said, over the last 5 weeks, as I'm teaching this, I'm becoming really aware of, oh, this is just an emotion that's coming up. This is just a thought. And in 2 seconds flat, I can just go neutralize it. It's like, I don't have to do that. I don't have to feel that way. Because this is just the wave coming up, and I can decide not to do that. I can say, oh, who cares? Like, I can be peaceful, serene.
So as a 1, when I was growing up, I was the same way. I had to beat everybody else to show that I was perfect. But then there came a time when I realized that I wasn't, and I absolutely gave it all up. I didn't care anymore. And so I went from the A's and B's to C's and D's for a while, because why bother? I will never be perfect, so why bother? I will never be there. And that lasted for quite a while until I ended up giving that up. And it's like, I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm sure going to be better than what I was. So what was that aspect of a 1 that would just give everything up?
Well, in a sense, that's grace. The grace of the Enneagram. When you finally, I mean, I had this mystical experience, and it took away that voice. I knew that sin was an illusion. I knew that I was only love, the universe was love, and I was going around for about 6 months in a happy place the whole time. There was no critical voice. And eventually it started to come back, and then it finally took over again. So I'm being a little facetious when I say it's grace, but on the other hand, it is a grace because it's the antidote to that whole poison that we have in our system. You know, and you can give up just because you're worn out. And so that's a good thing. We talked last week about the 3s, you know, trying always to have that image and trying so hard and striving. And then you get to your 40s and 50s and say, why am I doing this? So that's a moment of grace for all of, and it can be either literally a mystical experience, or it can be just you're so worn out you give up.
So as a 1 growing up in the 50s and being the second born in the family, there was that feeling that I was never because of my gender. And so that kind of amplified the effect of a 1 of, you know, trying to be good and do the right thing and that kind of thing. Then also my younger brother, I think this whole thing around nature and nurture, he is and he was impossible from birth. He was just like this very difficult child that was unwanted by my parents. And so maybe he picked up on that, you know, but he acted that out, and, you know, here you have it.
So, you know, as I said previously, that what we're attempting to do really is to navigate this so that we find these positions of health to incorporate from all of the numbers. So today we're going to be talking about the 4. And I know that I have to be careful about talking about the 4 because the tendency is to kind of do a caricature of 4s because they do stand out. They are very unique. They can look very different. And a lot of the literature even sort of pokes fun at them. And that's not really fair. They're no better, no worse than any of the other numbers. So, you know, I think it's important that we respect the 4. So for some reason, this does not want to cooperate. Let me give it one last try. And the only reason I want to do this is for the newer people. So we have the Enneagram Wheel. And if I can get this to minimize a bit. Okay. All right, I'm not going to do anything else now because it'll jump if I try. So again, for those who are new, I've got 2 microphones going. Can you hear me on this?
No.
It's not on.
I don't know what's going on.
There you go.
Okay, let me turn it in a bit. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, so we have the Enneagram Wheel with all of the 9 personalities. Starting at the top with the 9, who's the peacemaker, 1 is the perfectionist, 2 is the helper, 3 is the achiever, performer, the 4 is the romantic, and the 5 is the investigator, the loyalist, the 6th, enthusiast, the 7, 8 is the challenger. So today we're down here in this section of the wheel. So the 3s, the 2s, the 3s, and the 4s are in the heart center. The 1s, the 9s, and the 8s are in the gut. The 7s, the 6s, and the 5s are in the head. So that's just to give us a kind of a reference to where we're at. And let's see, we go to the app. All right. Oh, that's right. Okay, so the 4 is known as the individualist, the very special, very unique character on the wheel. That's how they experience themselves. Intense feeling. They feel that sort of the rest of us don't really understand them because they have this intensity of feeling. And they can get lost in that intensity of feeling then. The passion is envy. And what they mean by that is the 4 will look at the rest of us and go, wow, they have these special experiences. They have the special feelings. How come I don't have that? So they'll look at all the others and think somehow they're all better than themselves, that they're missing something. So they have an envy of the other characters, the other numbers. They covet what they think we're experiencing, that they somehow feel deprived in their experience. And they generally tend to think then that others have it better, that the other numbers have it better. Their fixation is melancholy, sadness, longing for what is perceived to be missing, which overwhelms appreciation of what they actually have. And they can be highly talented, and they have a wonderful sensate nature, like they'll feel the intensity of nature, of sunsets and sunrises, and of beauty. Beauty is a big thing for the 4. And yet at the same time, they might not be aware that they have that quality. They think that we're the ones who somehow appreciate beauty more. Let's see. Childhood wound. These children felt abandoned by one or both of their caretakers. They felt alone, cut off from the source of love for reasons they couldn't understand. They were not seen or mirrored and felt different from their parents. As a result, they turned inward to their feelings and imagination to cope with isolation. So, to cope in isolation. So they use their imaginations a lot, so they can be very creative people. Artists, poets, musicians, that whole spectrum. Also, maybe it's true to say that there can be androgynous, that there's a gender fluidity, that they understand what it's to be both masculine and feminine. And that's maybe a deeper understanding that they have of human sexuality, for instance. But they do have great imaginations, they can have. And then they have an internal focus of attention. It goes to the best of the past or of the future, and to what is missing or not good enough in the present. Always searching for the special something. So like there's that sense of something is missing here. And you will hear that too, as I said earlier, like the 1 has that feeling about it's not perfect, it's not whole, but for them it's like it's more of a feeling thing. And so this then can lead them into drama. They can be very caught up in drama with these intense feelings. People don't understand them because they have such intense feelings, or they want to express those feelings, and you're blown away by the expression of the feeling. And I imagine, and I'd like to have you maybe kick in a little later about the subtypes. I imagine some of that will have to do with the subtypes, because again, my experience of 4s generally is that they're very internal and they're very kind of withdrawn. But there are 4s who are more 8ish. They're like out there with their energy. So, again, we're dealing with a spectrum. So we have, these three numbers, the 9s, the 5s, and the 4s, who tend to withdraw, okay? And they withdraw into fantasy realm, our inner emotional landscape. And I think it's true to say that Peter Pan is a very good movie to understand a 4. No? 7?
Your pants is a
7, that's right.
7, yeah.
Sorry.
Your pants is 7?
Yeah, that's right. I know.
Bob Dylan would be a great example of a 4.
Bob, very, very creative, right? See, all of that.
Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp, yeah. We'll actually take a look at some of those also. Okay, I'm the only one who feels this way and no one else can really understand. So that would be kind of a classic approach or a statement from the 4. The underlying theme is a feeling of loss, abandonment, separation. Deficiency feels caused by some unknown tragic flaw in the self. So again, there's that critical piece to that where you're blaming yourself for this. They seek meaning and emotional depth to acquire what feels missing. So we're in that section of the wheel that is the heart space. So again, relationships and feelings. This is the language of the 4. Needs connection needs to connect personally to everything. So there's sort of an indiscriminate sort of trying to connect with everything, and of course that's not really possible. It's draining, and therefore they're chronically disappointed. I mean, you can imagine if every day you get up and you're trying to have this intense connection to everyone and everything, you're not going to have it. It's going to be disappointing. Their characteristics: attracted to the unavailable. So this is the woe is me, unrequited love, all of that type of poetry and music. Yearning for things in the past or the future. High drama, intensity, emotional extremes. Can have, again, we remember that there's a spectrum in all of these things. Can have intense mood swings and can happen on a dime. You may be in a conversation with a 4 and you may say something innocuous, you think, and the next thing, it's this volcano, in response, and you're lost as to, geez, I just said blah, 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 what happened? So the interactions with other people can be pretty intense. Mood can override facts. And so another thing that 4s tend to do is to withdraw, and so you might find that they're missing in action. They're holed up for 3 days or a week or a month because they're in that place of, melancholy. I was thinking about this actually the other day, and I've often said that I think that there are 2 types of Irish people. There's